The following Truth Barista podcast is a High Beam Ministry production.
The scary part is there are a lot more of these viruses out there, and chances that another one could spread into humans a few years from now are high. Scientists have been waiting for the next emerging virus, and this new strain of coronavirus is essentially a cousin of another emerging infectious disease called SARS that hit China and other countries starting in late 2002. For a long time, researchers thought these coronaviruses, which is what the new virus is, were basically not very risky. They thought they mainly caused a common cold, and it was kind of a backwater of disease research because they didn't think they made people very sick. SARS was a new coronavirus that killed people. The death rate from that was about 10%. That prompted a worldwide hunt from where these new viruses were coming from and how they were spreading into people.
Welcome to the Erzatz Coffee Shop. This is Jay, your Truth Barista, and I'm serving up a steamy cup of God's truth for the average Joe. You can catch me and this podcast on my websites, truthbarista.com, all one word, truthbarista.com, and highbeamministry.com. That's HIGHBEAM ministry.com, as in car high beam. We're shining the light of God's truth on the road ahead.
Truth Barista last week, boy, I tell you, I went home and I
and you
couldn't sleep.
despaired for the entire week. The sky is falling.
No. I was
What?
so challenged by it. Well, just the whole idea that God interacts with our world in such a way that he can say, yes, I'll protect. No, I will not. I mean, that's kind of where we left some of these examples you had about these pestilences coming and going in Israel.
You know what really also got into my head this week, besides tracking all these news reports, and you really have to be careful because you can't follow the sensational ones. You need to follow the ones that are not sensational, the ones that are giving you good information. I go to like flutrackers.com, which is very good because it's scientists who are contributing papers and information. You're getting fact-based stuff there. So, because I'm not a doom monger, but I'm also very aware that we need to be prepared for things in life, right? Biblical survival training. Mm-hmm. Okay. What also came to my mind is, man, the number of people over history who have died through plagues. And I was like, but then there have also been a lot of people who've died through warfare. And you think, there's nobody who was born in the year, even say 1800, that's alive today. A lot of people have died. And then I'm thinking, okay, this is the more important question. It's not that how many people die through these variety of means, etc., but we're all going to face that. Mm-hmm. Now, we could sit there and get focused on the death thing, but it's like, no, but there's a life. Mm-hmm. We were never built to die.
That's right. Initially,
we were never built to die. We were built to live forever in the Lord's presence. Mm-hmm. And we messed it up. But God's whole history, throughout human history in the Bible, is to get people back next to him, living with him forever. God doesn't want one person to be separated from him. And he has gone to the extreme lengths of sending his son so that everybody can come back to be with him. You have to literally look at God and say, I do not want that.
You know, I was just sitting here thinking, it's a good thing that Adam and Eve that are in heaven, I'm sure they're thankful for Jesus. You know why?
Why?
Because Jesus brought forgiveness. And if we didn't have forgiveness, they would be mobbed in heaven because they brought all this onto us.
It's your fault. I'll get you.
I fully understand.
Okay, so let's talk about this because I found another example. We left it with God using plagues and pandemics, not just against his own people and let's be upfront about this, he uses it as a punishment. He uses it as a discipline. There are other reasons we'll get into in a second here. Here's one. God used it against the Philistines. It's a really small story, but I find it fascinating, and it comes in 1 Samuel 5. Now, the Philistines attack the Israelites. The Israelites say, we're not prevailing against the Philistines, so let's bring the Ark of God into the battle. So they bring it into the battle. The Philistines go, oh, they brought one of their gods into the battlefield. We're all toast. Let's be men and fight hard.
Makes you embarrassed, don't it?
They defeat Israel and they capture the Ark. We've won. Our gods are superior. And so they take God's Ark and they put it into the temple of Dagon, their god, because their God is mightier than the God of Israel. Stupid Philistines. Mm-hmm. Well, not only does their God's statue fall over twice and get all busted up, but it says God sent a plague among them that created what they call buboes, or swellings of the lymph glands in their bodies, and it was accompanied by mice ravaging their fields. You know what that sounds like to me? Medical person that I try to be. Not a doctor, but I play one on a podcast. So here we go. Bubonic plague.
Oh,
Bubonic plague swells the lymph glands, and you get these really ugly black pustules and sores and things. It's carried by rodents. That's where the Great Plague came from that ravished Europe. And I'm thinking, God just simply probably just opened the door and the mice went into the fields, and the mice transmitted through their fleas bubonic plague to the Philistines, and the Philistines go, we don't want this ark, take it over there. So they send it to another city. Guess what happens? Same thing. They send it to another city. Same thing. Finally, another city goes, don't you dare send that over here. You put that back on a cart and you get it back to Israel right now, and guess what? It stopped. I just found that fascinating story.
It is. Well, okay, let's talk about judgment.
Okay.
Because I think that judgment is a word that we don't use today. It's almost like sin.
We can't use the word judgment in church today.
Oh, no.
That
or
would
sin.
scare people out of the pews, and our budgets would drop, and our paychecks would drop, our retirement would drop, our buildings would, go away. And so let's just talk about loving good things, because that's most important, right?
Well, and yet, is this a judgment from God? Let's just be open and honest about it.
Let's be open and honest. Now, once again, I got to let you know where my heart's at. My heart is God is love, first and foremost.
Sure.
God is also just, and you can't have one and diminish the other.
So in a way, then, you're saying that first and foremost, he's love, so then you're putting love above judgment. Is that true? Isn't he fair on both ends?
Yeah, mercy tempers judgment. That's what the scriptures say. Now, I can illustrate this in a way that you would understand. You have children, do you not?
I do.
Do you love your children?
They're not plagues, though.
Do you love your children?
Yes, I do.
Did they do bad things when they were growing up?
Yes, they did.
And in spite of your love for them, did you have to discipline them?
Yes, I did.
And that brought them into line. Well, what happens if they set their jaw against you and said, I will not? Did you have to punish them?
I did.
Did that eliminate your love for them?
No.
Did you discipline them or punish them lovingly? Or did you beat the snot out of them mercilessly?
No, I think I did. Of course, they would say no, but I did.
There's my point. My point is, yes, God can be both loving, but we cannot discount his judgment, because the Bible looks at all of this. It looks at the loving, and it does look at the punishment thing. And it's really mankind's I'm going to be better than God attitude that says, well, if God were God, he wouldn't punish people. God does punish people because he created them. He's their father, and he does do these things. So, suck it up, Buttercup. We got to take up the whole biblical counsel on this one. So let me show you in Scripture about plagues and pestilences being used as a judgment from God.
Okay, now you're talking about the end times now, right?
I've already shown you throughout Scripture how God has used these things in the past. How about in the future?
Well, that's what I was thinking, because some of these Scripture verses that I see on your outline here has to do with future.
Exactly, yeah. So grab those notes there. See, because I got smart and I brought notes for you this week so you could follow me. Okay, Zechariah 14:12. God says this will be the plague with which the Lord strikes all the people who have warred against Jerusalem. This is that end time battle. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet, their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. So if God says he's going to do that for those that come against Jerusalem and his people, why are we surprised that he might do something like that today if people are doing wicked things against other people that he loves, specifically against Israel? Revelation 6. This is the tribulation, and we're going to get raptured out of here and be saved from these things. Well, first of all, I am not a pre-trib rapturist. I think we're going to go through this. So for everybody who's really wanting the end times, there is a 25% part of the four horsemen of the apocalypse that is specifically plagues. It's the pale green horse. Which I think is funny, because when people get sick, you go, wow, your face is green. Because the blood drains out of your face. So people have kind of green around the gills, seasick kind of thing. It's one of the main judgments that will hit the earth besides death, famine, and a conqueror. Now, here we go right into the doom stuff, right? Revelation 9. The judgment that comes upon the earth in the form of a pestilence will kill a third of mankind. Now think of that. We're looking at about 7.5 to 8 billion people on earth. If this goes much longer, you're talking pestilence or pestilences that will kill about 3 billion people. And I'm just sitting here watching you shake your head because that number is huge.
It's almost unbelievable.
It is. So truth be told, yes, God does use pestilences and these things as both his discipline, chastisement, and judgments on the earth. Do we have to go through these things? I think we should explore that.
Well, I do. Here's a little rabbit trail. I think sometimes, and I'll qualify it if it's too confusing to you, but I think Hollywood with its sci-fi films often are more prophetic than the church.
That's a great point.
And the reason why is because they talk about things that could easily happen, such as, a lot of these sci-fi movies will do the Revelation 9 where humanity just gets totally wiped out.
Wasn't there a film out recently, I think it was Outbreak with Brad Pitt or something, and it showed the process or the effect of something like this in a very real way without sugarcoating it. And it's fascinating because at the very end of the movie, it backtracks the chronology to the person who is handling the pig carcass, and then he wipes his hands but doesn't wash them, shakes hands with another person. That's patient zero in the movie.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because I think that the church must begin to start looking at the prophetic in terms of some of these pestilences, earthquakes, and so forth, and begin to talk about it so people don't have to go to the movies to get their prophecy.
Right, and I want to tag this before, and I'm kind of running out of coffee here, so we'll take a break here, but let me point this out too. We've got a pandemic that's going on right now that's as potentially dangerous as the Spanish flu was in the early 1900s. But just because it's huge and it has a great effect, we can't assume it's the end or an indicator of the end. Pandemics have happened throughout history. We talked about that last week, right? But this is what's important. If those pandemics line up with the signposts, such as Israel coming back as a nation, Jerusalem coming back into Jewish hands, and the Jewish people coming home, that would strengthen the argument that pandemic might be a part of it. And if it lines up with other signs such as famines, earthquakes, and by the way, earthquakes entirely out of our hands, international conflicts, cosmic signs, those are out of our hands, turmoil and terrifying sights, as noted in the scripture, then you can more assuredly say, not 100%, because prophecy is best judged looking backwards after it's happened. It's likely to be so, especially if you have someone who is a tried and true prophet hearing from God, and God says, oh yeah, pandemic will start in this place at that time, like it happened with Moses, and it did. Okay, now we know that the judgments upon Egypt were from God directly.
Well, you know something, Truth Barista? I am so tired. Oh my gosh.
Coffee break.
It's got to be a coffee break. This is incredible stuff. We just have to take a short break and we'll be right back.
All right.
Life, the struggle is real. Find your way every day with the Truth Barista, a daily cup of God's truth for the average Joe. It's tasty, stimulating, delicious truth for every day. Go to thetruthbarista.com.
Well, hello there. How can I help you?
Could I have a caramel macchiato, and could I get some extra caramel with that?
Well, certainly. I see you around here quite often. Do you live in the neighborhood?
No, but I like your coffee. And on Fridays, I kind of sneak in on that little Bible study back there in the back booth. I kind of sit on the other side of the booth and drink my coffee and kind of eavesdrop.
Ah, that's where I've seen you as well. Well, I enjoy those discussions. It's really a lot of fun.
So what's the tip jar all about?
Well, it's our way of helping the Truth Barista kind of cover the expenses of this free study. He comes in and does this, and, we put it out on the internet after the study is over, and other people, really around the world can enjoy what he has to say. So the donation tip jar is just a way for people to help him do all of that.
Well, that makes sense. I've actually gotten some pretty good things out of just sneaking back there and listening. I think I'm going to probably do my part too.
Well, thanks. That helps a lot. Well, here's your coffee, and if you want to stick around a little bit, the Truth Barista's got more things to share.
Sounds good. This is the Truth Barista, your link to how God defines our day.
Hey, I got something I want to share with you. You ready?
I'm a captive audience. Where am I going?
Okay, I read a fascinating article by a man named Mike Snyder, and he notes that right now in China, they're not just going through one difficult pandemic, they're actually going through 4 simultaneously. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, they're going through 2 pig-type viruses. One is a swine flu, and one is the African swine fever. That's like an Ebola for pigs, okay? Once they get this, they're done. Those pigs are done. You can't cure them. That has wiped out 2/3 of the pork herds, the pig herds, in China, and pork is a mainstay of the Chinese diet. Plus, they've had an outbreak of the bird flu. They've had to cull something like 70,000 birds on one farm, and they're dealing with the coronavirus, which now has, at latest count, I think it's 100 million people have been quarantined. I've seen a shot from Shanghai, not a person on the streets. Absolutely a ghost town. So, Mike Snyder said, could this be a judgment on China because of their leadership's practices? Hundreds of millions of people aborted and of these other things. So I put that up on Facebook, and a friend said, we can't be too fast to declare every tragedy from God, right? So I wrote this back to him, and you give me your response, okay?
Okay.
So I wrote this. I'm not saying it is. I don't know. However, 1, the Bible does talk about God using a variety of means to judge nations, pestilence being one of them. Number 2, I'm mulling whether this is a matter of causation or correlation. In other words, did God cause it, or are things just kind of correlating at the same time? For example, a sickness could be by accident, happenstance, because we live in a broken world, right? Do you get a cold or a flu once a season? Okay, that just happens. Or it could be the result of us bringing it on ourselves, such as STDs. If everybody followed God's boundaries for sexual behavior, you could wipe out AIDS in a generation easily. Or it could be an intentional thing because plagues are being designed as bioweapons today. That is just a fact. Or fourthly, it could be from God. Or here's another one. Or it could be orchestrated or allowed by God for a purpose and not directly sent. He just steps out of the way and lets it happen. So I was asked about this recently as I'm continuing my response, and this article popped up. As a Christian and a pastor, what I do know is this. We're all going to die, and we all need to be prepared. And death can fall under the same parameters as sickness. It can just happen. It can be self-inflicted. It can come through warfare. It can be caused by God, ask Ananias and Sapphira, or it can be orchestrated or allowed by God, as in Israel going into the exile and the Babylonian attack in the Old Testament. Did you see what I'm saying here? The Bible speaks to all of these scenarios, and I still wonder, though, what might apply to the coronavirus today. We won't know until enough time has elapsed. We can look backwards and go, aha, we have a better picture. Does that make sense?
Doesn't make any sense.
Do you have any pushback on that?
No, I think it's very good. I think it's very detailed in all the possibilities that it could be.
You know, because I just kind of sit there and mull these things over on Facebook.
I see that. But, the pestilence, it is a part of what God says will happen in the last days, right? Like earthquakes and those kinds of things. Jesus said in the last days, before he returns, we're going to go back to like the days of Noah. And if you look at Noah's day, they were drinking and giving in marriage. They were living their lives totally ignorant or unaware of what was about to hit. Right. And I just wonder if that isn't somewhat of a foreshadowing of what we're going through. We have no idea what's going to come on the face of the earth. We've got global warming, and everybody's talking about that. They don't let anybody think about it as being something from God. The pestilences could be very much a sign, but he's still in control, Truth Barista, right? I think it's very important that we call people's attention why these things are actually happening today.
Right, and that's why I brought this up, because, we have people saying, oh, it's global warming, or it's global cooling. Well, being enough of a science nerd that I am, I also realized that the sun goes in 11-year cycles, and it goes into what they call grand minimums and grand maximums, meaning how many sunspots are produced or not produced on the sun. And they have found at these times when the sun seems to move into a grand minimum and there are few or no sunspots, less energy is being generated by that solar furnace, and the house called earth begins to cool off. Well, I'll tell you what, when the house begins to cool off, people have a tendency to get more sick, and they're finding a direct correlation over history to those grand minimums and plagues, not just sickness, mass plagues going through the earth, the Black Plague being one of them. Well, guess what? Scientists are looking up and saying, judging by what we're recording data from the sun, we're moving into a grand minimum. Now, if you add volcano eruptions to that, blocking out the sun, that will also cool us. It should not surprise us then if we start seeing some of this stuff happening because they've seen it correlated in the past. That tells us, we need to step up our self-care. We need to step up our preparations. We need to be wise.
I'm so glad you said that because I can continue to drive my SUV.
It's all about you, isn't it?
Okay, well, let's put it this way. This is one of my favorite Psalms because it really does go to the heart of the matter. We are very frail creatures. We have tremendous strengths and tremendous gifts from God, and humanity really is fearfully and wonderfully made, but we're living in a world that has been fearfully and wonderfully screwed up because of man's fall and sin and not doing things God's way. But I like this Psalm, Psalm 91. It's called The Protection of the Most High. Do you mind if I read it? Because I want to point out a couple of verses.
Man, it's scripture.
Okay, here we go. And I'm using the Christian Standard Bible, so I really like the RSV too. I like the way it puts, but this gives some really good meaning. The one who lives under the protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. That's an ongoing thing. That's just not ducking in and out from under his wings. Okay, verse 2. I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and fortress, ongoing, my God in whom I trust, he himself will rescue you from the bird trap or the snare of the fowler, the guy who's trapping birds, from the destructive plague. Interesting. And I kind of glossed over that, but now that I'm so sensitive, I'm reading through the psalm going, wow, this is a great psalm for today. Verse 4, he will cover you with his feathers. You will take refuge under his wings. His faithfulness will be a protective shield. And here's an aside. When chicks feel threatened, they run under the hen's wings and peep their heads out and just look, but are protected. Verse 5, you will not fear the terror of the night, the arrow that flies by day, the plague that stalks in darkness, or the pestilence that ravages at noon. Though 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, the pestilence will not reach you. Isn't that interesting? Because the big thing about pestilences is thousands falling at your side and 10,000s at your right hand. Your right hand is your hand of strength. That when you dwell with the Lord, he gives you strength. Strength whether you're going through it or strength to avoid it. And these things, even if everybody's dropping around you, the Lord is your strength. He is at your right hand. Verse 8, like the chicks, okay? You will only see it with your eyes and witness the punishment of the wicked. Verse 9, because you have made the Lord, my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place, no harm will come to you. No plague will come near your tent. Now there's a Bible verse for memorizing, right? For he will give his angels orders concerning you to protect you in all your ways. They will support you with their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the young lion and the serpent. And this is the Lord talking back now. Verse 14, because he has his heart set on me, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls out to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and give him honor. I will satisfy him with a long life and show him my salvation. Can I make a few observations? There are some people that would look at this and say, I will never get sick again. That's a possibility. The Lord can keep you free from illness for the rest of your life. Most likely you will get sick. There's a possibility you might get sick unto death. Even in the midst of illness, God can carry you through it. But even if you get sick unto death, God will still carry you through it. Why? It says right here, his heart set on me. I will protect him because he knows my name. Hebraically thinking, knowing somebody's name is knowing who they are. And the best way that we know how to get to know God is seeing the revelation in Jesus, is getting to know him. And that is an ongoing, active relationship with him. So even if you're like Lazarus, who gets sick unto death, he can either bring you through your illness and heal you, he can bring you out of death and restore you, or he can take you through death and you're in his arms. Either way, you're with him. Whether you're alive and healthy, or you're on your bed and sick, or you've left this body and gone to be with him, it's because you know him.
Well, we can say Truth Barista, and we should have a t-shirt with this on. When you're with God, it's a win-win situation.
Exactly. And I like the end here. He said he's given him all these promises of protection. When he calls out to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and give him honor. Here, verse 16. Think of his eternal salvation, right? I will satisfy him with a long life. You don't get any longer life than eternity, right? And show him my salvation. The root word to salvation in Hebrew is yesha, which is the root word for Yeshua, Jesus' name. Yeshua means salvation. So he can save you from getting sick. He can save you in the middle of illness, and he can save you if you have to go through illness and walk into his arms. Like you said, plagues, pestilences, pandemics? Nah. It's a win-win situation.
It is a win-win.
But it does say something for Christians, and this is if something like this does happen to the United States. You want to know what the Christians are doing in China right now?
What?
I just read an article. They're putting speakers on their bikes, and pastors and Christians are biking to areas where people are lined up to get masks, medical supplies, and get into hospitals, and they're preaching the gospel to them.
Yeah, good.
These Christians are getting blankets together and comfort. This is the greatest faith in action thing that is happening from a church that the government has tried to stamp out for decades, and it is becoming their finest hour in the United States. If this ever happens, if it happens in any other country, whoever is hearing my voice, this is the time for the church to rise up and to show the world hope and mercy and love. Even if it is a judgment from God, love and mercy triumphs over judgment. That's the point of this. This is Jay, your Truth Barista. Thanks for listening to the Truth Barista podcast.